It was supposed to be the safe bet. 10 Ontario cities where home prices soared, fueled by universities, stable government jobs, booming factories, and a rush of new buyers. But in 2025, cracks are spreading fast. Thousands of students have vanished from Kingston and Guelph, leaving empty rentals. Windsor's auto layoffs have cut off United States demand. Ottawa's promise of guaranteed salaries just evaporated, with over 12,000 federal jobs on hold. Property listings are exploding, taxes are rising, and in some towns, the number of people leaving now outpaces those arriving. So how did these once reliable markets become ground zero for a housing meltdown, and who's most at risk if the crash has only just begun? Kingston, Ontario. When your local economy leans this hard on a single university, even a small enrollment dip can send shockwaves through the housing market. Queen's enrollment has dropped 8% since 2023, and that's not just a statistic. It's about 2,000 fewer students searching for a place to live. For landlords who banked on 4 students in every converted Victorian, that's a vacancy crisis overnight. The city's rental market had been riding high, with Kingston ranking among the top 10 most expensive rental markets in Canada. Investors poured in, snapping up century-old houses near campus, confident that steady streams of undergrads would keep the rent checks flowing. But now, those same houses sit empty, with for lease signs multiplying on every block around the university district. It's not just lost rent. Many of these properties need constant upkeep. Think $6,000 special assessments just to keep the plumbing and wiring up to code. That's a tough pill to swallow when your tenants have vanished and your mortgage depends on full occupancy. Meanwhile, home prices jumped 45% during the pandemic, but local wages barely budged. The median household income in Kingston sits at just $58,000, while the average home price hovers around $420,000. That gap leaves both buyers and owners squeezed, especially as the city's aging infrastructure demands pricey repairs. For investors who thought student rentals were a sure thing, 2025 has become a wake-up call. The math no longer works, and the ripple effects are just beginning to hit. In Kingston, the first cracks in Ontario's housing boom aren't theoretical. They're showing up as empty bedrooms, rising costs, and landlords wondering if the safe bet just ran out. Guelph, Ontario. When your city's fortunes rest on a university campus and a handful of tech firms, a double blow can hit hard and fast. The University of Guelph has cut enrollment by 12% since 2023, eliminating about 300 jobs across faculty, administration, and campus services. That's hundreds of paychecks gone, with fewer students filling lecture halls and even fewer looking for off-campus apartments. But the academic squeeze is only half the story. Guelph's tech sector, once a magnet for startups and remote workers, is shrinking. Over the past year, more than 400 tech jobs have vanished as firms consolidate or relocate to bigger hubs. For a city that sold itself as an innovation hotspot, that's a cold reality check. The impact is visible downtown, where high-rise investor condos, once snapped up by parents and speculators, are sitting empty. Rental vacancy rates have surged to 20%, a figure unheard of in this market just a few years ago. Empty units mean landlords slashing rents or offering incentives, desperate to fill space that was supposed to be a sure bet. The investor rush that drove new condo construction has turned into a retreat. Buildings that were supposed to house students and young professionals now echo with vacancy. The ripple effects touch everyone: property managers with too many keys, laid-off tech workers searching for new opportunities, and small businesses that relied on a steady stream of campus and office traffic. Guelph's housing market, once buoyed by steady enrollment and tech optimism, is now flooded with supply and short on demand. The warning signs aren't subtle. Downtown towers with darkened windows, job boards with fewer postings, and a rental market that's flipped from bidding wars to open houses with no takers. For anyone weighing a move or an investment, the message is clear. The old guarantees don't hold, and the safety nets are gone. London, Ontario. When top-down decisions start pulling the rug out from under local markets, the fallout is swift and often invisible until it hits home. At Western University, a sudden shift in dorm policy has removed 4,000 potential renters from the city's off-campus housing pool. For property owners who banked on steady student demand, that's a gaping hole in rental income with no easy fix. The city's healthcare sector is not faring much better. London Health Sciences Centre, one of the region's largest employers, has frozen hiring for 600 positions. That's not just a number on a spreadsheet. It's 600 families who won't be putting down roots, shopping for homes, or filling up downtown apartments. Meanwhile, several major downtown development projects have stalled, leaving empty lots and half-finished buildings where new jobs and housing were supposed to rise. Landlords and investors are feeling the squeeze from another direction too. Stricter rental legislation has made it harder to evict problem tenants or raise rents to match rising costs. For many, the risk outweighs the reward, and listings are quietly piling up as owners look to exit before the math gets worse. Ottawa, the nation's capital, is caught in its own policy web. A federal hiring freeze has put 12,000 public service jobs on hold, sending a chill through the city's core. The impact ripples outward. Condo developers who once banked on steady demand from government workers now face a glut of unsold units. Over 4,200 new condos have hit the market, far outpacing the number of buyers willing or able to take them on. The result? Active listings have climbed, and the once reliable flow of public sector employees into Ottawa's housing market has slowed to a trickle. Many are looking across the river to Gatineau, where the cost of living is lower and property taxes take a smaller bite. Migration to Quebec is up 47% in the last year alone. Both cities are feeling the strain as municipal budgets stretch to cover aging infrastructure and new projects, with property taxes creeping higher to fill the gap. For buyers and investors, the old rules no longer apply. When policy freezes stall job growth and flood the market with empty units, demand doesn't just slow, it evaporates. And in places where government jobs once meant stability, the ground is shifting under everyone's feet. Windsor, Ontario. When your city's heartbeat is the auto plant, every layoff feels personal. In late 2024, Ford's Windsor engine plant cut 600 jobs. Overnight, that's 600 families facing an uncertain future. Down the line, General Motors kept shifting production south, chasing cheaper labor and lower costs. Every time a shift disappears, it's not just the factory floor that goes quiet. Suppliers, diners, corner stores, they all take a hit. For decades, Windsor's edge was the border. Thousands of locals crossed to Detroit each morning, earning American paychecks and spending those dollars back home. That advantage is fading fast. Cross-border commuter numbers have dropped by 40% since the pandemic. U.S. homebuyer interest in Windsor real estate has cratered, down 70% in the last year. Suddenly, the city's main selling point, proximity to Detroit, just doesn't matter as much. The housing market is feeling every tremor. Active listings have surged 65% year over year. Homes now sit on the market for weeks, sometimes months, as buyers hesitate and sellers get nervous. For a family with a mortgage tied to a factory paycheck, the math starts to look grim. The risk isn't just lost income, it's the ripple through every part of life. This is what happens when a city bets everything on a single industry. Windsor's story isn't just about cars or border crossings. It's about the real people. Assembly line workers, their spouses, their kids, watching the foundation they built their lives on start to crack. Oshawa, Ontario. For years, this city was the poster child for Greater Toronto Area spillover. Families priced out of Toronto snapped up homes here, betting on remote work and easy highway access. That bet is unraveling fast. The return to office wave has hit harder than anyone expected, and the flow of buyers from Toronto has slowed to a trickle. Now, former Greater Toronto Area homeowners find themselves stuck. Long commutes, higher costs, and a resale market that's lost its shine. Active listings in Oshawa have climbed steadily through 2025, with inventory reaching levels not seen since the last financial crisis. Sellers outnumber serious buyers, and properties that once sparked bidding wars now linger for weeks. The pressure is especially sharp for those who moved east during the pandemic, only to see hybrid work policies vanish and transportation costs soar. With transit fares and gas eating into paychecks, the gap between home price and actual affordability keeps growing. The financial squeeze doesn't stop at the front door. Oshawa's 2025 budget hiked property taxes by 7.87%, the steepest increase in the region. That's an extra $474 a year for a typical $1 million home, on top of rising mortgage payments and utility bills. For households already stretched thin, it's another reason to reconsider staying put, or even owning it all. Job security is no longer a given. Over 600 skilled positions have disappeared from Oshawa's manufacturing and tech sectors in the past year, leaving many residents with fewer options and more uncertainty. The combination of job loss, tax hikes, and a glut of listings has created a feedback loop. More people try to sell, but fewer can afford to buy. In a city that once thrived on the promise of Greater Toronto Area growth, the reversal is unmistakable. The safety net of Toronto demand is gone, and the risks of holding on are rising by the month. Barrie, Ontario. The dream of affordable homeownership just outside the city has run headlong into a wall of hidden costs. For families who moved here hoping to save money, the numbers now tell a different story. The average home price sits at $500,000, but the typical household income is only $73,000, a gap that has grown wider every year since the pandemic boom. But it is the commute that really shatters the illusion. Getting to a Greater Toronto Area job from Barrie now drains about $850 a month just for GO Transit, $19 per trip, twice a day, 5 days a week. That does not include the cost of parking in Toronto or the price of gas and insurance if you try to drive instead. For some families, transportation alone eats up 20% of their paycheck, turning every trip into a financial calculation. The pressure is not just on the wallet. Time lost to traffic, often 2 hours each way, means less at home, more stress, and a growing sense that the trade-off is not worth it. Meanwhile, the housing market is showing clear signs of strain. Barrie now has 2,800 active listings, more than triple the historical norm of 800. That is a flood of properties, many purchased by investors or families who thought the commuter lifestyle was a bargain. Now, with remote work options shrinking, more owners are trying to get out, and buyers are getting scarce. For the archetypal Barrie family juggling mortgage payments, gas bills, and GO fares, the math no longer adds up. The promise of affordable living has been replaced by a monthly squeeze, and the so-called value proposition is cracking wide open. In Barrie, The cost of getting to work is wiping out any savings from moving farther out. And the housing market is starting to reflect that reality. Sudbury, Ontario. In a city where the price of nickel sets the mood, the past year has felt like a gut punch. Nickel prices have dropped 30% since their peak, gutting paychecks and putting entire mind shifts on notice. When the backbone of your economy is this volatile, every global headline hits home. The shockwaves reach far beyond the minds. 3,000 young people under 35 have packed up and left, chasing steadier work and better prospects down the highway. That is a brain drain Sudbury cannot afford, especially when the city's future depends on keeping skilled workers and young families in town. For homeowners who stuck it out, the bills keep climbing. Property taxes have jumped 23% in just a couple of years, piling on top of stagnant wages and mounting repair costs for aging homes. It is a double bind. Older residents on fixed incomes watch their tax bills rise as their home values slip, while the next generation simply moves away. The result? Houses linger on the market, and the buyers who do show up are bargain hunters, not families ready to put down roots. Sudbury's story is not just about commodity cycles or fading smokestacks. It is about a community losing its lifeblood one moving truck at a time, and the homeowners left behind to shoulder higher costs with fewer neighbors. The cracks in Sudbury's housing market are not just financial, they are generational, and the long-term impact is only beginning to show. Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario. The region once branded itself as Canada's Silicon Valley, a magnet for startups, engineers, and global tech giants. In 2025, that story is coming apart at the seams. Tech layoffs have hit with a force few expected. BlackBerry cut 800 jobs, Shopify let go of 300, and Google slashed its local headcount by 40%. The result? Hundreds of highly skilled developers and engineers out of work, with resumes flooding a job market that's suddenly short on opportunities. But the damage doesn't stop at the office. The skyline tells its own story. More than $400 million worth of condo projects have been canceled, leaving empty lots and half-finished towers where new homes and jobs were supposed to rise. Developers, once bullish on endless tech-fueled growth, are now pulling back, wary of oversupply and shrinking demand. Office vacancy has climbed to 15%, a number that would have seemed unthinkable just a few years ago. Downtown towers that once buzzed with activity now echo with empty floors. For renters and homeowners, the fallout is everywhere. Investors who banked on steady demand from tech workers are scrambling to fill units. Listings are creeping up, and rents are softening as the pool of well-paid tenants dries up. Meanwhile, small businesses that depended on tech sector foot traffic, cafes, gyms, corner shops, are feeling the pinch. The promise of a new economy safe haven has faded. In Kitchener-Waterloo, the risks of betting everything on tech are suddenly all too real. Hamilton, Ontario. For decades, this city wore its steel crown with pride. Jobs were steady, paychecks were reliable, and the housing market followed suit. In 2025, the story could not be more different. The steel industry has already slashed 3,000 jobs, leaving entire neighborhoods searching for answers and pushing families to the brink. The fallout does not stop at the factory gate. With fewer paychecks circulating, local businesses are closing up shop, and the economic lifeblood that once kept Hamilton moving is running thin. The housing market, once a magnet for out-of-town buyers and quick-flip investors, is now buckling under its own weight. Home prices have soared 67% since 2020, but incomes have barely budged, just 8% growth in the same period. That kind of gap is not just unsustainable, it is a trap. Buyers who stretched to get in are now watching their monthly payments outpace their earnings, while new buyers cannot even get close. The city's $2 billion LRT project, once promised as a ticket to renewal, has blown past budget and left taxpayers on the hook for overruns no one planned for. Every household is feeling the pinch as property taxes climb to cover the bill. Speculators who once lined up for pre-construction condos are finding the math has turned against them. Investor listings now make up 31% of all homes on the market. Many of these sellers are desperate to unload units that no longer promise quick profits. Some are even stuck trying to close on condos worth less than what they agreed to pay. The perfect storm is here: job losses, infrastructure debt, and an affordability chasm so wide that even seasoned investors are heading for the exits. For Hamilton, the days of easy money and guaranteed growth are over. The only question left: who is holding the bag when the music stops? In 2024, Ontario's 10 most vulnerable cities saw home prices outpace local incomes by as much as 67%, while job losses and policy shifts triggered thousands of empty units from Kingston to Hamilton. The data shows a clear pattern: over-reliance on single industries, whether tech in Kitchener-Waterloo, auto in Windsor, or government in Ottawa, has left local markets exposed. Property tax hikes, from Sudbury's 23% increase to Oshawa's 8%, are adding further strain. Yet the full impact of investor withdrawals and stalled infrastructure projects remains uncertain, with some municipal records and migration data still incomplete. What is clear: the pandemic housing boom is over, and these cities face tough adjustments ahead. For buyers, retirees, and investors considering Ontario in 2025, the evidence points to rising risks and falling prices, not the safe haven many expected. The numbers, the documents, and the lived stories all lead to one fact: the era of easy gains in Ontario's housing market has ended.